today we're reviewing the book, and boom, Bob's your uncle, and for real, Fanny is your aunt.
So I'm just going to read this quickly because it sets the tone for the fact that many people hide behind masks, and it's very important that we look behind the masks in marriage. Henry came from an upper middle class family background. He was the eldest of four. His father was a lawyer with his own thriving practice, and his mother was a principal of a large government model secondary school. His mother had subsequently started a school of her own that had done extremely well. Her school was the go-to school for children far and wide in their country. The school had progressed rapidly and had graduated to having a secondary school with full boarding facilities. Henry's parents owned the 4-bedroom duplex they lived in. He shared a room with his brother, and his sister shared another, and his parents had the master bedroom. The 4th room was used as a guest room, a study, and storage. They'd always had enough of everything they needed, plus the occasional luxuries. For instance, when he was 15, they'd all traveled on vacation to London for 2 weeks. Another time, his dad had bought a brand new car 2 years in a row, first for his mom, then for himself. Neither his dad nor his mom was prone to excess. They were prudent and constantly taught him and his siblings about the value of money. They got pocket money regularly, but always just enough for what might be needed. Some allowances were tied to things they had to do in the house, for the house or for either parent. When he got into the university, during each holiday, his father usually connected him with one of his many friends for some form of vacation job. He was expected to save that money towards a particular project or goal. Henry grew up to be serious-minded, goal-oriented, and financially prudent. He had studied law like his dad, but had veered off into financial consulting. He had taken professional exams to advance himself in this area and was currently an assistant manager in one of the top financial institutions in the country. His line manager had commented in his most recent assessment that Henry's knowledge, skills, and understanding of company culture was exceptional. He was well respected, worked extremely well with others, and for those virtues, Henry's line manager recommended him for a promotion. Henry earned a decent salary for a 28-year-old. He lived in a nicely furnished 3-bedroom apartment in a nice area of town. He had bought himself a new car with some of his savings and with some help from dad, and was considered quite an eligible catch by many in his organization. Yadera had grown up in the lap of luxury. Her father was a billionaire, the current chairman of the bank he had founded some 20 years ago. He was ranked as one of the top 10 richest men in the country. Her mother dabbled in interior design, but picked and chose the kind of projects she wanted to execute. They were mostly her dad's rich friends, their various offices, and she was mainly a woman of leisure, traveling at whim and loving to shop. Her time was predominantly her own, and as such, she had been present at every recital, every half-term, every parent-accompanied school trip. Every parent-accompanied school trip that Yadera and her siblings had ever participated in. Yadera was born in America, had traveled every single year of her life up till the time she met Henry. She fell in love with him, and they got married. When she was younger, she and her 2 siblings always traveled first class with her parents. As they got older and her dad got richer, he purchased a jet that they began to use on family vacations, especially, and this was often, when these trips coincided with daddy's business trips. They owned a beautiful home in London in affluent St. John's Wood and another in Hoboken, New Jersey. Daddy was generous. He would always say that he wanted only the best for his princesses, Yadera and her sister. He didn't want them to be enticed by what any man could give them. Therefore, Yadera and her sister's vacation allowance was more than enough. Some might even call it excessive. Birthday gifts were expensive designer bags or jewelry, and sometimes gifts came just because. For her 21st birthday, as she graduated from the University of London, Daddy had gifted her a white Wrangler Jeep. She loved it. Yadera and Henry had met at a novelty interbank football match. After they got married, issues arose right from the onset. Daddy had wanted to give them a luxury flat in one of the most exclusive areas in their city, but Henry had declined. Yadera had an arrangement with Chief Uwem, who had been the chef in Yadera's family home from the time she was 10 years old, to make the week's meals and have them delivered to her home with Henry every weekend. Henry had had a problem with that too. He wasn't obnoxious about it, but she could tell that he didn't like it. Yadera constantly wanted to travel on a whim, and try as she might, she just couldn't abide traveling in economy, not even premium economy. She had tried it once when Henry had insisted that that was what they could afford. He had told her that they needed to be prudent with expenses and build from the ground up. She couldn't stand it. She had made up her mind that she wouldn't be doing that again. So that's Henry and Yadera. And there's Kunle and Katara that had tribal issues. There's 4 case studies that deal with the various issues that two people coming together might not examine, and this translates into their marriage. And boom, Bob can really become your uncle, and Fanny can actually become your aunt.
Fantastic.
And the premise of this book is that before one ever meets somebody they want to marry, they really need to ask certain kinds of questions and interact in certain ways before you ever meet anybody. And that's why it applies to all of us here. If you have young people who have not even met their life partner, for those who are dating seriously, those who are engaged, those of us in marriage that God is helping, there's a continuous need for there's a continuous need for discovery, because literally many of us already in marriage have actually found that Bob is now our uncle and Fanny is now our aunt. So it talks about beginning from the beginning, from before you meet anybody to when you're dating to in. So that's the title, that you need to be careful even in marriage, because boom, Bob does become your uncle and you find that Fanny, really, freaky Fanny, is your aunt.
All right. Or the central ideas in this book is that we just don't marry a person.
Yes.
We marry them, their entire family,
Yep.
the family system, values, beliefs, wounds, conditioning, everything.
Yep.
Why do you think that this consideration is so underestimated, especially in this generation?
I think it's underestimated because what we call love, you see, if any of us thought about love now, myself included, it tends to be that, I don't know, butterfly kind of feeling, I just really love them. For our young people, but even me, I'm 61, and I still want that feathery sort of butterfly in your stomach kind of feeling. So we underestimate it because we feel that feelings alone will sustain a marriage, and it will not. I mean, not to get all Christianese here. The thing is, you have to count the cost before you begin a building. And many of us don't, especially in the area of marriage. We prepare for everything else, for careers. Laterna didn't start in a day. It started somewhere. The cost was counted. You look at what it's going to cost you, how you're going to do it, what the market is saying. When it comes to marriage, for some reason, and if you want me to go all spiritual here, maybe because that's the bedrock of society, and so the enemy attacks it. The truth of the matter is that we don't consider this in marriage because we reckon marriage is just going to work because we love each other, because we're good Christians, for the Christian people, because you speak in tongues. Everybody thinks it's just going to work. But everything that needs to be built, you have to be intentional about building it. We underestimate it because we think love is going to be enough, and it just isn't.
Taken beyond reasonable measures, causing the youngins to elope, for want of a better word. So my question is, are we in some way to blame for eroding or abusing that system? Why do you think that system deteriorated or no longer exists?
Well, I think in some cases it does, but it's whether the young people will listen. And this is why, I am passionate about marriage. In fact, sometimes when I get on the topic, I become so animated and I look at myself later and I'm thinking, please, you need to calm down. But the truth of the matter is, for every single person here, whether you have biological children of marriageable age, whether you have people in your sphere, young people in your sphere of influence, we need to tell them this thing, because those of us who are married or have been in relationships that could have led to marriage know for a fact that you need to know the person. See, I can know they're both wrong. That's the truth. And as the word says, everything reproduces after its own kind. Whether you're a spiritual person or not a spiritual person, you can never plant orange and get apple. It doesn't happen in the physical world. And so those, yes, maybe they were abused, but we have to tell our young people how important it is that you know what is in a person. You see, knowing what is in a person doesn't necessarily mean don't marry them in some circumstances. Why do I say this? If, for instance, somebody had a physical ailment, say in a family there's obesity or there's diabetes or there's glaucoma, in discovering that somebody has those kind of ailments doesn't necessarily mean, okay, that means I can't marry the person. But it does mean that you're aware that this exists. Therefore, maybe we might need to watch our sugar. Maybe we may need to do our eye tests every year or something. You understand? You take measures to do that. And so I don't know if the system was abused. I'm Igbo. In Igbo land, you go and ask about the people and all that, and those things are relevant. When I met my husband, and funnily enough, I met my husband through Mrs. Morgan, actually, yes. That's how I met my husband, through Mrs. Morgan. You see, I remember a letter my father wrote me. Where does he, there's a word, my father was a lawyer, not antecedents. Who are his antecedents? One long letter he wrote, sadly. Sadly, this was not in the day of social media, so it was a physical letter, and I put it in the wash one day. It was in my jeans pocket, and that letter was a masterpiece. Where does he descend from? Where does he something? My in-laws are here today. He asked all kinds of questions, and I'm sure they asked all kinds of questions about me. This is what we have to tell our young people. Those of us in it already know that there's some things you discovered that may have been there that you overlooked. So we need to tell them, maybe it was abuse, I don't know, but it's a system that must come back, because rabbits, they born from. It's as simple as that. The apple never falls very far from the tree.
True. Yep. That was well articulated. Let's be honest. Let me say it in local parlance.
Yes.
Now woman, they choose man. I think several men will present themselves. And then you decide that, oh, it is this one that I want. I find that many of us make that life-changing decision before we fully
come into ourselves,
who we are, what we want, our vision for our life. So yes, in other words, and to double down on what you said, because it completely resonates with me. PPMCs would include character development, self-awareness, emotional intelligence, your needs, your wants,
your desires, your
communications,
and
finding a partner that fits
into that. Change will always come by someone even recognizing that something is wrong. And a lot of the things that people grew up with have introduced things that are so deeply ingrained in them.
I'm going to move on to the next question. Many people believe that love is enough.
Love is enough.
Love is enough. Many people believe that love is enough. Your book respectfully challenges that idea. And the question is, if love alone is not enough, what else must be present for a marriage to thrive?
Oh my God, alignment, communication, discussions about what you want, you understand? Because you see, if I ask everybody in here, myself included, I'm a romantic, I'm telling you through and through. If I asked everybody in here to define love, the answers will come up with, in fact, people have difficulty defining it. But if they were pressed and they didn't think anyone was going to judge them, they're going to say, you just really want to be with the person. You just kind of really love the person. You just sound handsome. He speaks to me like, when I use... You understand? When he touches me, oh my God, when I see her. But the truth of the matter is, it cannot sustain the marriage. True story. My pastor is late now, told me one time about somebody who got married, carried her over the threshold. The husband carried her over a threshold, went to the fridge, brought out a bottle, smashed it on the table and said to her, you are no longer in your father's house. You are now in my house. True story. Wow. Now, what I want to say is the thing that will make a person do that, I'm telling you, you needed to have seen it. These things about it, that's one. And no matter how your body was doing before he broke that bottle, after that bottle, your body will set.
Your temperature will change.
So, yes, it will, yes. So the truth of the matter is that kind of love is not enough. And if we look at the definition of love in this #1 bestseller of all time that I always reference, not to offend anybody, love is not just, it's not a feeling. Love is really an action, and it's motivated by will. You understand? You decide to love. It's a verb. I'm not saying it's easy, not saying I perfected it. But the truth is that is what love really is. Because in marriage, so many things, what the union needs to sustain and achieve cannot be born by feeling alone. Because I can sometimes wake up happy, I can sometimes wake up sad, there's so many ways I can. Feelings are ephemeral. Is it the word ephemeral? Yes, they're fleeting, they change. If they inject you, we have some medical people here, if they inject you with, is it dopamine now, you will be happy. They inject you with maybe cortisol, you're going to be down. It's a hormonal thing. You have to take control of your will. So no, love, the kind that we talk about, is not enough. It needs to be a love that is motivated by will. And that's why marriage is so serious. You know, people talk about excelling, being entrepreneurial. Everything is underpinned by marriage. In fact, if I were to say, and I was the MD of some multi-conglomerate, every person in my whatever needs to know what love is. Real love that can hold covenant, that can go through sickness, illness, happiness, sadness, lots of money, no money. Life is broad.
Thank you very much, Amaka. In fact, I want everyone present here to give you a round of applause for bringing us here for this conversation. You have delved into the question I was going to ask. First has to do with, we were just discussing here that we are married counselors. When we were talking about counseling in the church, whether it was fast-tracked or it actually passed through the normal course, this couple have made up their minds on what they want to do. We cannot give them that at the point of their getting married. What they're after is just the wedding and after wedding. Then my question is, we give birth to these men. We give birth to these women. Why can't we start from conception to train them this value system about marriage? Because if we don't do that, we are usually at the receiving end. Women, why can't we now come together like we have done today and start? It's never too late. It is never too late. It is never too late. We can't start that to train them for this value proposition in marriage. Thank you.
This is 2026, and no culture, no man, for that matter, is going to ask her daughter to stay in there if she's being abused in a marriage. I'm not going to do that. I'm a dad.
God bless you.
So that culture is changing.
I've seen couples that, that after 8 months of marriage, they're already having problems. In fact, they're separated. And I asked them, did you do any counseling? They said no. So just like Amaka said, we put so much emphasis on the preamble than the amble. The preamble is, the marriage. We put everything, Ashebi and whatever, but the marriage itself, we do not actually invest in anything. We don't go for counseling. We don't read books. If you don't want to go for counseling, you can read books. There's knowledge everywhere. So no young person should fail in marriage because we did not model it right.
My final question to you today would be, if every young adult had to leave this conversation remembering just one lesson from "and boom, Bob's your uncle, and for real, Fanny's your aunt," what would you want that lesson to be?
Examine yourself. Know yourself so that you're not unequally yoked. Know yourself. Yes, so that you're not unequally yoked. So that each time, whether man or woman, somebody approaches you along the line of, let's take it a bit further, you are able to know what you can and cannot take. And don't get me wrong, you may not know everything. But you see, a kind person is a kind person. A person who comes from has good core values is somebody that has good core values. You understand? A wicked person is a wicked person. Remember that somebody can have money today and tomorrow they don't have money, whether man or woman. Not to be graphic, although I always like to use graphic examples because they shock. We say tall, dark, and handsome. But, there's some people that have been amputated before and they're no longer tall or whatever. Do you understand? Or I want a body like, well, Christians here, but let's say Beyonce, for instance. People can get fat after having children. So I mean, come on, our bodies aren't the same as they were. So you're going to have to look for something a little bit deeper. A little bit deeper.
Get a copy of the book. It's titled "And Boom, Bob's Your Uncle, and for real, Fanny is Your Aunt." Get a copy of any
other books because it's an integrated system. It is. It's an integrated system.
Insightful, full of wisdom, and drawn from biblical principles. It's been a pleasure
It's been lovely, Ireti.
to sit and moderate this session. Again, you've been a wonderful audience. Thank you for making it enjoyable. Thank you for making it easy.